30 years ago today marked the beginning of the greatest snowstorm of all time, the blizzard of '96. This was a massive, wide-reaching storm that buried tens of millions of people from Tennessee to Massachusetts in feet of snow. Our storm began as an area of low pressure in the Gulf on January 6th that would gradually make its way northward over the coming days. This storm became exceptional for two primary reasons. Number one was because of a dip in the jet stream caused by a prominent ridge in the western U.S. The second was a continuous flow of Arctic air pushing in from the northeast. This was actually set into motion a few days earlier as a separate storm brought major snows to New England and an ice storm to the mid-Atlantic. The fresh snowpack and the positioning of the first storm meant that the second one would be further south and colder. The main question leading up to the storm would be how far north would the heavy snow reach? Remember, this was 30 years ago where technology was much more primitive and the models were just not nearly as skilled. This was a slam dunk for big snows from basically the Mason-Dixon line southward, including Baltimore, DC, most of Virginia, while Philly would be right on the border and New York City to Boston was not expected to see much of anything. As we moved closer to game time, the models kept correcting to the north and west and also increased the precipitation. This meant that we would be going from a significant snowstorm to one that would be historic. On Sunday, January 7th, 1996, this storm rapidly deepened and brought heavy snow and blizzard conditions from as far south as Georgia and Alabama all the way up to New England as well as the Ohio Valley. In the end, a wide swath of 18 to 36 inches fell from eastern Kentucky and western North Carolina all the way up to the south shore of Massachusetts, including the entirety of the DC to Boston metros. The overall jackpot was in Pocahontas County, West Virginia, which recorded a maximum snow total of 48 inches or exactly 4 feet. Philadelphia received around 31 inches of snow, which to date is still its greatest snowstorm on record. In fact, there was so much snow in Philly that it was eventually dumped in the Schuylkill River. In addition to the heavy snow, this blizzard also brought significant coastal flooding and beach erosion to coastal regions, including the Jersey Shore. Another unique thing about this blizzard is that it was a cold storm. Temperatures throughout the storm were in the low teens to single digits. This meant that the snow that fell was light and fluffy and therefore easier to accumulate. But not only that, this storm was also highly impactful even well after it departed. Later that same week, on January 12, 1996, another snowstorm brought between 6 and 12 inches from Virginia to Maine. Then later on in the month, as temperatures warmed up considerably, there was severe flooding across the Northeast due to the combination of a new rainstorm and melting snow. In terms of whether the blizzard of '96 achieves GOAT status, this is only one of two storms that has been given a Category 5. The other was the superstorm of March '93. That one has a very strong case too, as we saw a foot of snow all the way down to the deep south. However, that was much less of a deal in the big cities, which saw mixing. What also puts the blizzard of '96 ahead of '93 is that in many areas, the 95-96 winter was the snowiest on record, and in some areas that still stands. That winter had a snowstorm every month from November to April. It was pretty much a non-stop continuous winter from Thanksgiving to Easter, which just sounds insane. Now, I was not alive for this blizzard, but if you were, comment below about what your experience was. And if you're a snow lover like me, I'm sure you're very much rooting for something like this to happen again, but who knows when that'll be.